Good job. Got 6 now. So today we've got a lot of stuff to go over today. So one of the big things I'm trying to do with this teaching is really to help you understand how to understand the Old Testament. That's one of my big goals with this. How do you know? You've got to know who the people are, where they're from. You've got to know how did the people of Israel interact with these people. You know, it's interesting. I was just talking today, talking about the kings. It's all about interaction with other people. How they interacted with the people and what the other people did made a very big influence on Israel and often took them away from God. So we will actually be starting the prophets next week. Now, but we had to get this stuff done. So if you have not gone through the polytheism lecture, please make sure you do that because polytheism is so important. If you have not done the homework, especially the homework when it comes to looking up who is God from Aristides, the philosopher, basically describing who God is to a polytheistic emperor. Please do that. That will help you immensely to understand what we're going to be talking about. Because throughout the Old Testament, and if you don't understand polytheism and who the people are around them, you're going to be lost. So it's very, very important to do that. So we're going to finish up the history and geography. And again, the only reason why I'm doing this is that so people will understand where we're going to be going and who the people are. Because the problem, most people, I have a feeling, don't read the Old Testament because you read it and you're like, what the heck are they talking about? And I think that's really kind of throughout history, people for the last few hundred years are kind of saying, you don't really need the Old Testament. I think it's more the fact that because people just don't really understand it. And they don't understand who the people are, what was going on, why they were doing what they were doing, who they were talking to. That is all very, very, very important things. So let's get going. So today we're going to start with Tyre and Sidon. Now these are what we call city-states. City-states are basically a city with a small state. So think about like Virginia. Virginia or like Oklahoma. That's a state. The main, Oklahoma City, or whatever, Richmond, those are city-states. That's what Tyre and Sidon really were. Tyre was actually part of Israel originally, but they never took it. We'll get to that in just a little bit. We also call them the Sea People. All right, although Tyre and Sidon is not a huge part of Israel, we still need to understand because when we go through the prophets starting next week, we're going to be hearing from Tyre and Sidon. They have a big thing to play in this, okay? You're going to see that Tyre and Sidon, they were a Phoenician city. What that means is they came from the west, from the Mediterranean. These guys, what we call, were ancient. They believe they were the ancient Minoans. If you might know anything about history, the Minoans were kind of the Greeks and Cyprus. If you know about the islands of the Mediterranean, if not, I highly recommend going and looking up the Mediterranean because if you understand the countries around the Mediterranean, you're going to understand the Bible because that's where everybody interacted with. It was the big body of water right next to them. So Tyre and Sidon are going to be part of those guys, and they came over. They are called the Sea People because they came from the sea. By the way, there's one other. Anybody know what the other Sea People other than Tyre and Sidon are? There's one other large people that did the Sea People. Anybody? Yeah, well, Philistines. The Philistines. Yep, Philistines. Right. Those are the Sea People. Good job. So those are the Sea People. Tyre, Sidon, and Philistines. All right. Tyre is mentioned as a fortified city in Asher's territory. They never took it. Thus, because they did not take it, they did not do what God was saying to do, this people became a very big problem for Israel. All right. They really were the symbol of judgment because quite often the prophets denounced them because they were a very big, if you go through Ezekiel, if you go through Isaiah, if you go through Jeremiah, quite often they're going to spend time denouncing all these people. And basically God's saying, you guys are not doing very good. So Jezebel is really the big one, the big person who come from this. If you guys know who Jezebel is, Jezebel was the wife of Ahab, one of the really evil kings. Jezebel was nasty, and she most likely wore the pants of the family. And she had quite the nasty end, but she came from that area. Ethbal is probably known as Jezebel's father. Now, again, here I'm telling you this because note the name Ethbaal. Notice Baal in there. Who do you think he worshipped? Yay! Good job. So remember, when you say Ethbaal, that is going to be Tyre. If you say the god Asher, that's going to be Assyria. If you're going to see the god Marduk, that's going to be Babylon. So all of those guys, when you read those names, those are what you should always think about. Again, these are helpful hints to help you to understand this. So Jesus actually even visited these areas. So when they say the Syro-Phoenician woman, that was in Tyre and Sidon. Cedars of Tyre, where do you think they got the wood for the temple? Right from these guys. They have their area is very high. They actually have a lot of mountainous ranges, so they have a lot of cedar up there. And whenever you hear from cedar, going to get wood for the temple, everything else, that's from these guys. Tyre was actually conquered by Alexander the Great. Now, why is that important? It's just, I threw this in here because it's just an interesting story. So if you can see, Tyre actually was an island. It's just a little bit out in the bay. Kind of like if you think of Alcatraz, in a sense, kind of right out there in the middle. But it was pretty much protected. You couldn't really defeat these guys. Now, Nebuchadnezzar did do it first, but what Alexander the Great did is he actually built a bridge straight across and walked on into it. They thought they were impregnable, but Alexander the Great spent 6 months, have his people build a bridge out to there. Usually it wasn't really a bridge, it's more they just kind of dug dirt and put the dirt in there. And that kind of got it that way. So that's where they fell. So there is really no Tyre and Sidon today. They're actually part of Syria, Lebanon, and those places. All right, the Persian Empire. Now, these guys are very important. Remember we talked about Babylon last week. Babylon is always thought of as very, very bad. Why? If you remember, Babylon was because the people were taken into captivity and they came back from captivity. You don't hear anything about Assyria because those people never came back. So to the Jewish mind, Babylon is the ultimate evil. That's what took them away. That's what they destroyed the first temple. They caused a lot of problems. And even the Christians I'm sorry? I thought someone said something. Oh. Even the Christians kind of took that in, they thought Babylon, Rome was Babylon to them. Because Rome occupied Jerusalem. Rome was a pretty bad place. So whenever you hear Babylon, think about it always in a negative connotation because that was the people that got taken away. Now, I'm going to tell you something. The Babylonians, the people who went to Babylon, did not have it as bad as the people who went to Assyria. It really wasn't as bad thanks to Daniel and Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Those guys helped out. We're going to get to there. But just note that Babylon was pretty bad. So Persia, though, came in. Persia became the biggest empire to date at this point. Okay? If anybody knows about any of the Greek wars, that was mainly Persia who did those things. Okay, the Achaemenid Empire. This is the Achaemenid. This is kind of like the Tudor. If you ever know about the English kings, the Tudor dynasty. Think of that. It's kind of a dynasty of kings of a particular time from those guys. Now, by the way, Persia really comes from all the way east, Iran. The Iranians still speak Persian. Okay? They still speak Persian. They still talk, and they have a lot of history from that. So that's where the Persian guys came in, and they took over, defeated Nebuchadnezzar, and actually at that point it would be Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, I believe. So Cyrus the Great was the founder, 550 BC. And it was a very, very big cultural center. We still have a lot of things. So if you ever heard of the Arabian Nights, that comes from Persia. All the things that you like, Aladdin, that comes from Persia. That's of this time frame. So there's a lot of stuff going in there. Cyrus the Great. Now, the reason why we're saying Cyrus the Great, you don't get to be called the Great for nothing. The reason why we call him Cyrus the Great is because the Jews put that name on him. Unlike Babylon the evil, Cyrus the Great was the guy who helped them out. So the key was, Babylon and Assyria had a very bad thing, what they did to people. They took them into captivity. They destroyed them. As we talked about last week, Assyria, they flayed their skin. They were pulling teeth out. They were doing all kinds of really bad things. Okay? And then they also sent people into exile. So it's not hard to assume that everybody and his brother is going to hate them. And they're all going to attack them, and they're going to want to get rid of them. So there were always wars with those guys, and that's how they fell. Persia pretty much came in and said, wait a minute, let's try something a little different here. Let's actually be nice to the people. Didn't think about that. Be nice to the people? Really? Now, granted, it's not that, and they still took money from them, they extorted them and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't anything like the guys before. What these guys did is said, okay, we're going to send you back home. And you know what? If you want to worship your God the way you want to worship him, you're good to go. That's a very happy thing. Okay? Because most of the time, they're going to force them to do one of the big problems that the Muslims did when the Muslims came and took over, we see that they forced everybody to become Islam. And they were not very nice about it. So instead of torture, mass deportation, Cyrus allowed people to return to their homeland and become back to their own religion. It wasn't just for Israel. They did this for a lot of people. Now, according to Josephus, Cyrus was very favorable to the Jews in Babylon. So, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, granted, if you go through Josephus, he's going to tell you about all this stuff that he had, there was friends in there and everything else. But from a biblical perspective, the one that made it possible for everybody to like the Jews was none other than Daniel. When we go through Daniel, you are going to be surprised because we're going to go through it and I'm going to show you timeline, king, and miracle. Everything Daniel did, it wasn't just great stories. Everything Daniel did was for a reason. God did things through Daniel, and what he did is made Daniel very favorable to each of the succeeding empires. So we're going to go into that. And by the way, we're going to go into what I would like to think about as the triad. Daniel, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel all at the same time did very specific things in dealing with Babylon, making it a lot easier for everybody. So, all right. So Cyrus liked the Jews because there were people inside Cyrus's, Daniel being one of them, because remember, Daniel was actually there when Cyrus came into power. So, the only thing is, though, that once they got the first people back, if you want to know about going back from Babylon, you're going to want to read Ezra and Nehemiah, because those are the books that specifically talk about them coming back. A lot of information in those guys. So they came back, and then, of course, when you come back from exile to the land 70 years later, you've got people there that said, oh, we've already settled in. We don't want to go anywhere. We like this place. And so what they did is it was actually the people from Moab, which is, remember, one of Lot's sons, and the people of Samaria, the people north of them. What they did is they're the ones who made Israel stop building the temple. They lied to Cyrus and Cambyses, the next king, saying that Israel, oh yeah, they're plotting against you. And all. So they literally had to stop building the temple. They get there in 536. The temple wasn't even completed until 516. And the reason why is for at least 10 years, these guys lied. Now you wonder why, from knowing that, why when we get to the New Testament, Jesus and the people hated the Samaritans. That's why. They lied. They kept him from the temple. They tried to get involved with it. There was political. They actually, if you read it really carefully, they were paying off politicians in Israel. Those guys were. Yes, it happened back then too. Politicians got paid off like they do now. Same thing. There was a lot of anger with those guys. So that's so just understand the reason why they hate the Samaritans so much was because of what they did during that time. Now, under the leadership of King Darius, the second temple was finished. This is kind of a mark of what it looked like, the second temple. It wasn't as nice as the first, by the way. Now, this actually is Herod's version of it because Herod actually came in and built onto it. So this was not this nice. So the second temple was nearly not that great compared to the first. But Herod in 20 BC was an Edomite, and he came in, he got in charge, and he helped build the temple to make the Jews happy. Now, by the way, I was wrong here. It was built in 20 BC, but it wasn't 80 years later, it was 90 years later, in 70. So between 60 and 70, they had a big problem with them, and it was destroyed. The temple was never rebuilt. We still have the Western Wall today in Israel. Ezra and Nehemiah are the ones dealing with these guys. So whereas when you want to learn about the other prophets, you got to read through Kings and Chronicles. If you want to learn about when they came back, you got to go through Ezra and Nehemiah. Now, granted, the sad part is that they are actually put differently in the Jewish Bible, but for some reason, when they put the Greek Old Testament together, they kind of combined all certain things into this area and this area. So it kind of makes it, Ezra and Nehemiah is kind of in the middle of the book, middle of the Old Testament. A little confusing. Just note that Ezra and Nehemiah is everything about coming back to where they were. So, Ezra wrote, they believe Ezra actually wrote Chronicles, because it's interesting because the first chapter of Ezra is literally the last chapter of Chronicles, verbatim. So, Artaxerxes were the kings in the 5th century. What happens? Ezra led another band of people, because you got to remember, only about 25,000 people came to the first temple the first time. Then they took another 25,000. They took another 25,000 under Nehemiah. So 3 prophets that are dealing with those guys: Zechariah, Haggai, and Malachi. Or if you're Italian, Malachi. Hey, Malachi! So, but these guys are very specific. Now, the difference is when you read those guys, it's not gloom and doom. Okay? These guys were, come on, you can do it. Build the temple, you can do it. They were really big, encouraging notes. Malachi, though, by the way, just a piece of advice: before you read Malachi, read Ezra and Nehemiah. You will understand Malachi verbatim. You'll be completely clear. Malachi is 100% clear because it literally goes through all the problems that Ezra and Nehemiah listed. So Malachi goes through all those problems. And it's amazing. If you go through Ezra, then you go through Nehemiah, then you read Malachi, you're like, oh yeah, I understand what they're talking about. So just a piece of advice. All right, the Battle of Marathon. Now, the Battle of Marathon, I'm only throwing this in because people are kind of interested in this. The 26.2 mile marathon run. What that actually came from was the Persians attacked Greece in 490. Now, what was supposed to happen was Greece I believe it was Athens, that what they were supposed to do, the women and children, they did not want to be taken captive by the Persians. So they were going to kill themselves, literally commit mass suicide. And so what happened, so they didn't want to do it yet until they found out what the battle was. So if the battle was lost, they're offing themselves. If the battle was won, they're good to go. So, luckily for them, the Greeks beat the Persians. Okay? Greeks beat the Persians. So from that point, then this dude gets and he runs 26.2 miles to tell them, hey, everything's good, you don't have to kill yourself. Seriously. It was a big thing. So that's where we get it from. He actually died after, most people who run 26.2 miles are not used to doing it. They probably won't live long. So, but that's what he did. And Phidippides was his guy's name. So, interesting. All right, one other thing, I just going to throw this out. Zoroastrianism. This is interesting because Zoroastrianism was really the very first, other than Judaism, is one of the first monotheistic religions in the Middle East. Okay? It came after Judaism. Judaism was the first. Zoroastrianism was another one. So, but what's interesting, and I threw this in there. Now, if you guys, I circled Mecca and Medina right there. I've always wondered why Muhammad combined both Judaism and a little bit of Christianity. I don't think he combined that at all. I think what he combined was Judaism and Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism basically had one prophet and one God. Sound familiar? Sounds like Islam. So and you can see that between Iran over here and Jerusalem over the other side, it was right in the middle. So if you're going to make everybody happy and create a new, and I'm sure it was the devil who actually did all this, because according to Muhammad, some angel came and told him this. By the way, the Bible says even if an angel comes and tells you something different than what I'm telling you, let them be cursed. The Bible says don't listen to an angel. Well, he listened to an angel, and now we got Islam. So the thing is, this is kind of in between. I figured I'd just throw this on there because we're talking about Persia. Interesting. All right, mismanagement and loss. One of the problems with the Persians, they may have been nice to the Jews and everything else, but they were greedy, like most other politicians. They wanted it all. We want it all. We want more money. So they were, living lavish lifestyles. It kind of like, if you ever learn about the French Revolution, the way Marie Antoinette and those lady guys were living their wonderful lifestyles, and everybody else was living in squalor. Well, that's what it was. So they got a lot of stuff, and they mismanaged the money, and it was like their kingdom kind of fell apart. So, because at that point, once things are started going downhill, Alexander the Great comes in and defeats them. Okay? Now, just note this about them is Rome never defeated them. The Roman Empire never defeated these guys. That's why I'm saying why Zoroastrianism is important, probably with Islam. Anyway, so Alexander the Great defeated them and brought in a bunch of stuff. Now, he brought his own problems in. He actually was very nice to Israel. If you want to know about that, please watch the videos from a couple years ago on the intertestamental period. I went into all of this. All right. Now, before we go to the next part, I kind of want to tell you guys that one of the things I really want to try to portray in this class is the idea that God is not an ogre. God is not mean. God has a purpose for everything he does. Remember when we went through polytheism, the people never knew what the gods wanted. That was a big frustration for them. They didn't know what the gods wanted. They didn't know what they did. So the people were they would go and, take sheep's livers. They would have 2,000 people trying to figure out what the gods wanted. That was a big problem. But I'm going to tell you something. God is not like that. He always told them what he wanted. He is always very specific in that. So when we go to this next section, which is going to lead us into the prophets starting next week, you're going to understand this. All right. So many people claim that the God of the Old Testament is mean-spirited and vengeful. I threw this up here. For some reason, I always see this because if you're a Monty Python fan, you've seen this before, and it's this picture of God. It's terrible. Because God, basically, if you went through the teaching from Alcides the philosopher, you know God is not a man. Okay? He's not a woman. Okay? He's not anything to do with creation. But the thing is, God, that couldn't be farther from the truth. God was actually very kind to the people. And we're going to see through this class that God was very, 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 very kind. And it went on for about 1,000 years. 1,000. 1000. God didn't just go in there and the next year said, you're done, you're gone, we're out of here. No, he was very long-suffering. So I put this on there because readers suggested what's the best representation of God. And what's really sad is the people of the world, that's how they see God. Some old guy in the sky, with a mean look on his face and throwing lightning bolts on people. But that's not at all what he was. And let's talk about who God really is. The best way for me to describe that is to describe what God gave to the Jewish people to help them to know him and to know what to do. And that is the judicial system. So the law. Now, God and our judicial. Now, this is my favorite judge. You guys know I watch a lot of live court, which helps me to understand a lot of these things. But this is Cedric Simpson. Love this guy to death. He's like the best judge. I have a lot of very, very honorable man. But the thing is, our judicial system is based upon the Old Testament. We got it from the Old Testament. They didn't get it from us. They didn't get it from us. So we got it from the Old Testament, and the law of the Old Testament is very, very much similar to the judicial system, okay? How God operated. Now, one of the things you're going to find in the judicial system is there are laws. Don't speed. Don't drive crazy. Don't shoot somebody. Don't steal from somebody. Hey, but one other thing we got to remember is if you do something and there's no law, what are they going to do about it? I mean, yeah, eventually they might be able to do something, but they can't really do much to you if there's no law about it. So if I walk and jump on the sidewalk, there's no law about that. So no one's going to do anything with me. But the thing is, the key with the law is it's there for a reason to keep people so people know what everything is going to happen. Okay, Stephanie Boyd, very nice Christian lady. She's a Christian judge, one of my other favorites. But the list of laws and punishments for breaking those laws is really the idea behind what God did in the Old Testament. The judicial system has attempted to prevent crime rather than punish it. Big time. And I'm going to tell you, they don't just throw people in jail. I watch it daily. Let me tell you, they want to do this. Now, what's interesting, the reason why I'm putting this in here, is because God does the very same thing. He doesn't say, don't do this. Oh, you did it. Lightning bolt. No, that's not at all what he does. It's not at all God of the Old Testament. What they also do is they give probation classes, they give drug and alcohol rehab, they give monitoring, they get mental health, to help with mental health. Their whole goal is turning someone around and getting him in the right way. Sounds like our God, because in James 5, verse 20 says, remember this. Whoever turns a sinner from the error of their ways will save them from death. Number one, that's the first thing. And will cover a multitude of sins. Guys, those sins are against other people. You stop someone from stealing, someone is not going to be stolen from. Stop someone from killing other people, people are going to live. It's not just about the person. One of the things we've got to remember about God, when he saves us, it's not just say, well, we're going to save you from hell. That is, to me, that's the worst thing in the world. That's not what God wants. Because it's not just he doesn't just want to save us, he wants us to turn away and be kind to each other. And that is the big thing that happens here. So what we're going to see in the Bible, God did a lot of things, and the goal was in the Bible was not just to punish them, but to turn them away and get them going in the right direction. Why did he sin? Remember we talked about the first day. He stopped it from raining. Why? Because people were looking to Baal, which is the rain god, instead of him. So if God stopped it from raining, Baal is now impotent. And you don't need to look to him anymore. You come look to me. I can take care of you, God says. He's a purpose for everything. Just like the judicial system. Our judicial system, there may be some problems, but I'm going to tell you, it's actually very good at what it does. All right. In the same way, God does the same thing as the courts do. Laws and punishments. He goes into this, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. And there's also progressive punishments, meaning that in the beginning of Judges, if you read Judges, God was very light on things. Very light. Small little things he did. But it made things kind of hard for people and stuff. But the idea was to turn their hearts back to him. It's always that fact. He not only wants you to live, but he wants you to be kind to someone else. Mercy's giving a lot. And the court system, we give mercy a lot too. So this really comes into the blessings and curses. And this is the reason why I'm going into this is because when we get to the prophets, the prophets are going to be the ones who are going to be talking about the curses and the blessings. So in Deuteronomy 28, and please read that when you go home. Read Deuteronomy 28. Let me tell you, it's pretty hardcore. It's not always that easy. So everything in Deuteronomy 28 was actually spoken of in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. God, when he does things, he says it 3 or 4 times. Now, I was a teacher for years, and actually I was just teaching yesterday at my job. I was teaching people about some things. And so I really like to reinforce things over and over and over and over again. So God's going to do the same thing. He's not going to make you get a sheep's liver to figure out what's wrong with them. He's not going to make you go through divination and magical practices so that you can get to him like the people do in polytheism. God tells you straight up, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Sounds like our judicial system. And by the way, the curses are not really things that curse you. It's not that. It's really, if you look, I like this thing better. A coarse or blasphemous word or phrase used to express anger or strong emotion. And it's really, if you ever read, when you read Deuteronomy 28, I think you're going to kind of see that. This is what's going to happen if you turn away from me. This is what's going to happen. God doesn't want you to turn away from him. Because let me tell you something. One of the things we got to learn in the prophets is that God constantly, in the middle of announcing judgment, saying, but if you do turn back to me, I will redeem you. I will save you. I will help you. You're going to read that all of a sudden in the prophets, God's always going to have a nice thing. But if you do come back to me, that's the goal. It's not just for me. It's not just going to save me from hell. It's for me and what I do to you. So the blessings. Here's the thing. God says, all these blessings will come on you. Now, I remember the charismatic church used to love to sing this. But the more I read this, the more I'm thinking, I wonder if they ever really read this. Because it really says, if you do these commands, then. But the thing is, that's the key. But he starts with the blessings. He doesn't, he starts with the good things. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this for you. Come back to me. God does not want superficial love. God wants love in action. And this was in the Old Testament. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with your soul, with all your strength. Everything within you. Do what he says. Obey him. It's interesting because God is more interested in your obedience than your sacrifice. Because God never got mad at Abraham for the dumb things that he did. Okay? Abraham was justified because he did what? Believed God and did what he told him to do. That's what God wants. God wants obedient children. But then in Leviticus, he goes even more, says, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. The goal was you work with God, allow him to do what he needs to do in you, and God will create in you love for others. And so everybody, basically, we want the world to be a better place. Well, we need to start with us coming to God. And one thing, let me tell you, recently I've been praying so much that God would actually give me a heart to be nice to people, to be kind to people. Because I'm realizing that's what he's like. And that's what he wanted in the Old Testament too. He wasn't an ogre. He just really wanted people to be kind to each other. The goal is to have no other gods before him. He wants to be number one. You must look to God and observe the 10th commandment. Do not covet. Don't want what everybody else got. Your neighbor next door has a big car. Ooh, I want that. Ooh. No. Be content with what you've got. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, his wife, his male, his female. What's interesting about this one commandment is it's really about the heart. It's the up here. When we want something from someone else, we want it, and we're going to do whatever we can to get it. And not a good thing. So, now let's talk about the curses. Now I'm going to tell you guys, when you read this, I can't even get into it. It's very rated R. Curses are rated R, okay? Everything you put your hands to will be destroyed. You'll have plagues and diseases. I will withhold rain. Ooh, we just talked about that. Remember? Elijah. But again, the goal is not the fact that he's going to withhold rain. The goal is he wants you to come back to him. The goal is he wants you to come. He wants your heart, and not only just for you, but for other people. See, that's been something in my mind. I was always the most selfish person in the world. It's not just for me, it's for other people too. Because whoever I interact with is going to be affected by what I do. Forcibly taken into captivity. We know that's going to happen. Locusts will destroy fields. That actually happens very early on in Judges. Great nations will come from many places against them. Well, we know that's going to happen. It did happen. But again, these things, by the way, the great nations, the captivity, all that stuff happened 800 years after they got there. Didn't happen right away. It was a slow process, and the key is they were supposed to read the law every year. By the time we get to Manasseh, the worst king of all, they hadn't read it for 50 years by that time. So you can imagine what the people were like. They didn't care. Guess what happens when we stop reading the Bible? If we don't read the Bible, if we don't spend time in the Bible, okay, if we don't spend time learning about God, well, it's never that great. So, they will lay siege to your city. Now, they lead to cannibalism. Guys, I'm not going to go into the rated R, what God actually went into. He went into great, great detail of this. Trust me, read it. It's bad. But you know what he's doing? He was trying to scare them to say, stay with me, guys. Come on, stay with me. Don't go anywhere else. You will be oppressed and robbed by your enemies. That's exactly what happened. All these things really did happen to them. And let me tell you something. I don't always think that God is going to just like throw lightning bolts at people. A lot of this stuff happens because of our choices. If you can't get along with your neighbors, another country comes in, how are you going to fight against that country if you can't even get along with your neighbors? If we're constant battle with one another, If we're always hating each other and protesting in each other and everything else, what do you think is going to happen when a country comes in and tries to take over? We can't defend. I'm saying that's what happened with these guys. It could happen here. The point is, God laid out for the people the payment for both fidelity and for forsaking God. Fidelity basically means a state of being loyal and faithful. God, and I put that word specifically in there because this is what God says. And how he describes it in the prophets, it's all about fidelity. He wants you to be loyal and faithful and to not act like a prostitute. He used the word prostitutes a lot. God views the relationship between Israel and himself as a marriage. He does the same with you, the bride of Christ. That's who we are. It's a marriage. When fidelity is broken, the Lord refers to the breach as unfaithfulness and prostitution. Basically, you are prostituting yourself out to other gods. When we go through Hosea really, really, really deals with that point. And it's pretty hardcore. Because God's like, tells Hosea, you're going to go marry this prostitute. Now, Hosea was a very prominent guy. So when he married a prostitute, I'm sure it caused quite the scandal. But the idea was God was saying, and then what Hosea preached after that was the fact that God was saying, you guys are prostituting yourselves out to these other gods. You want money, you want cars, you want sports, you want work, you want all these other things. But instead of looking to me for everything, you are now looking to all these other gods. That's where God's coming with all this. That's the idea of the Old Testament. Come back to me. So Jerusalem as the adulterous wife. God said that a covenant relationship with him and Israel exists because he saved, rescued, fed, took care of, brought them into a new land. And I'm going to tell you guys, he says that a lot. I took you out of the land. I did this. He says over and over and over and over and over in the prophets, reminding Israel what he did for them. What did he do for you? How did he save you? What did he do? He did it all for you. And by the way, you didn't do it for him first. He did it for you first, just like he did it for these guys. In turn, God expects his people to remain faithful to him. And nothing explains this better than Ezekiel chapter 16. So that's the other one I want you guys to read. I want you guys to read Deuteronomy 28, and I want you to read Ezekiel 16. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get the IVP background commentary and read through it while you're doing that, because it will tell you exactly what he means by all this stuff. So you don't have to, but I do recommend you do that. Because the idea is, when you read the Bible, you got to read it slow. It's not a marathon. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We want to learn what we're learning, so we've got to take time. So when Ezekiel chapter 16, God goes into great detail, and it's hard to read. It's PG-13. So it's not as bad as Deuteronomy 28 with the rated R. But the thing is, the goal is God's trying to get a point across with this. His point across is that Jerusalem is likened to an adulterous wife. You're adultery. You're going and finding all these other guys. And then he goes and says, it's like you're prostituting yourself out to these other gods. And we do the same thing. It's no different. Whatever's the most important thing in our life, we put that above God. We put that above God. But remember, and this is the thing we've got to always remember, and this is something I have to keep reminding myself of, is that it's not just about me. It's about you guys too. When I'm nice to you guys. And things will get better in our lives. So, All right, and that's it for that. But let me tell you guys what I also did this week, and this is a handout for you guys. It's not really homework, but I would recommend reading it. What this is if you ever wanted to know what a Levite does every day, back in the day, the priests, what did they do? Well, this goes into everything. Now, what I did is I took this from a teaching. It was 11 I think it was 12 pages long. I literally got rid of all what it was is the two guys were talking to each other, and the guy was basically saying, yes, yep, sure, okay, no problem. I got rid of all that, and I literally just put down the meat of it. So what this is going to do is going to talk about how the priest deals with sacrifices. Taking the fat outside, cutting it up, rejecting certain sacrifices, bringing in certain sacrifices, which sacrifices are important. It will actually help you to understand what these guys had to go through back then. So this is very important. So please read Deuteronomy 28. Please read Ezekiel chapter 16. 16, right? Yep, 16, just make sure. And please try to understand what God is really saying to them. Are there any questions? So next week, we're going to start with the prophets. We've got all the background information we need. We're going to start with the prophets, and we're going to start with Ahijah, Rehoboam, and Jehoram. And next week is going to be, in my opinion, one of the worst things that could have ever happened. And it all stemmed from one guy, Solomon. Not a good guy. So, thanks, guys. Glad you're here. Have a great day. All right. All righty then. Yes, ma'am.